So it's finally time to give you guys my first smartphone review ever. This is the S2 Plus from a company called Elephone. Yeah. This video was brought to you by gearbest.com, bringing you the best tech at the best prices. Check the link in the description below to find out how you can get yourself an amazing deal on tech products today. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to Tech Yes City. This is Brian coming back to you guys today, oddly enough, with a smartphone review. This is my first ever smartphone review.
So go easy on me, okay?
Now this phone comes in at $130, and for the money it does represent very good value for money. But just how good is the value for money in different departments? Well, today I'm going to tell you guys all the strengths and weaknesses of this phone, but first we'll take a look at the build quality and what's in the box, then we'll take a look at the specs, and then I'll tell you my subjective experience with this phone. So included in the box is the phone itself. You'll also get a charger, a screen protector, or actually a few screen protectors, and a clear case for the rear protection of this phone. Now looking at the rear of the phone itself, you get a tempered sapphire blue glass look there with the Elephone branding on it. It does actually feel of very high quality. I was really impressed overall with the build quality of this phone. Though looking at the top of the phone there, you get a 13 megapixel camera, which in practice takes very good photos. That surprised me as well. Besides that, you've got a flashlight there, which does allow you to use as a flash or a torch if you're in the dark or anything like that. And below that, you also get a speaker, a loudspeaker there, which in practice allows you to hear voices pretty well. But if you're listening to music, I'd probably step it up to a mobile portable speaker solution. Though, moving on to the bottom of the phone here, you'll notice that they've included this aluminium frame, which again feels of very high quality. That's the micro USB charging port, which you'll get a charger included, and you can use it for data transfer as well. Looking at the left of the phone here, we get the micro SIM slot there, which supports dual SIM support and also the ability to have a 32GB memory card in there as well. The one thing I will critique about this slot here is that it was in practice very hard to get the slot out. You had to use an included tool, which I would have much easier, or this would much easier be remedied if they had just put a fingernail slot there and allowed you to pull it out with your fingernail, as opposed to in practice using this tool, which you might lose in the future, or if you're out and about and you need to take something out and reinsert your SIM card, for example, you may have trouble doing that. On the top of the phone here, we have the headphone mic jack, which is 3.5 millimeters. Though one thing to note is that you will not get a headset or pair of headphones included. So you will have to use your own if you wish to use or listen to music from headphones with this phone. Though on the note of the DAC amp solution itself, I did believe the bass and the sub bass were lacking with this phone. For instance, something like my Huawei did sound a little bit better in practice, especially if I was going for jogs. I'd much prefer listening to music on this as opposed to the Elephone S2 Plus. Though moving on to the right of the phone, we've got there the power button and the volume buttons, which feel very good in practice, and again sheathed in that aluminium frame, it does represent very good build quality. Now moving on to the front of the phone, we have here again tempered glass, which one thing to point out about the tempered glass is that it does fingerprint very easily, and the included screen protector is also gloss as well. So if you want to get rid of fingerprints, then I will suggest using or buying a matte screen protector for this phone. That's something that I would highly recommend, as the fingerprints were very noticeable. Though looking at the business on the front face of the panel here, up the top here we have a 2 megapixel front facing camera. We also have a micro speaker there for conversations and voice calls, and then we've got the screen itself, which is a 5.5 inch IPS display at 720p resolution, and it does look very good. For me, I tend to not really care about resolutions on a smartphone, as 720p for a 5.5 inch screen is more than enough for what I'll need. Also down the bottom here we have the UI button, the home button, and the back button there, so in practice this phone will work very well as well. Now looking at the specs and measurements of this phone, you get a quad-core Cortex A53 CPU. You also get a 2GB of random access memory and 16GB of storage space included in the phone. The battery as well, one thing I'll point out is that it is hard pressed into the phone, so it is non-removable. So that is a little bit of a bummer about this phone. Though looking at the measurements, you get 72mm wide by 144mm tall by 18mm thick, or should I say 18mm thin. It's also 125 grams, though that note, with the actual weight of the phone, even though it's lightweight, it does not feel cheap at all. Like seriously, this is one of the best feeling phones in terms of quality that I've ever felt in my life. So kudos to Elephone for making a phone that just feels really nice to touch and feels really solid. Though let's quickly go on now to the last part of this review, and that is my subjective experience using this phone. So when I first pulled the phone out of the box, it came fully charged, which is a great thing, so I could start using it right away. And with that being said, I was impressed at how responsive the touch screen was. As well as the brightness settings, I could use it in any scenario, even outdoors in the bright lit sun. Things were still easy to read at max brightness settings. Now, one thing that I will say with this phone is that for me, I have to base my review on wireless only, as when I inserted my Japanese SIM card, this phone did simply not support the Japanese bands. And what this meant is that the phone would just overheat. It would literally drop 5 to 10% of the battery within like 5 minutes, and the web pages just would not load up if they did at all, and it took them a long time to do that. So then I double checked the actual bands of this phone and the Japanese bands, and I found out they just weren't compatible. So if you do wish to buy this phone, even though it is unlocked and it is readily available for worldwide usage, you'll have to check your country's bands and whether they are fully compatible with this phone. That being said, when I started playing games with this phone, I was impressed. This thing gave a very smooth experience, and when I started playing a racing car game, for example, I was very impressed at how much fun it was. It was actually one of the first times I've actually had fun playing a game on my smartphone. So you will be able to play games and do all that jazz with this smartphone. Though one thing about using this phone is that the UI I thought did look a little bit boring and basic. It looks like something that I would have used from 2008, for example, and I feel that with Android 5.1, Elephone could really produce a really sexy UI. For instance, my Huawei phone, that comes with a really intuitive and really easy to use UI that looks really good as well in practice. So in conclusion, what can I say about the Elephone S2 Plus? Well, actually quite a lot of good. I was shocked at how good the build quality of this phone was. Not only that, the included specs. You're getting a quad-core A53 in there, and you're getting 2GB of RAM and 16GB of storage space, which when I compare that to my Huawei, for example, you're getting double the RAM and double the storage for $50 cheaper. But on that note though, one thing to point out with this phone is that the DAC amp solution was a bit lackluster. For instance, I much preferred going for runs with my Huawei than I did with this, and I thought the bass and the sub bass were a bit lacking, and that is very indicative of a cheap DAC amp solution. Though also one thing I will further point out with this phone was that the included UI was a bit lackluster. It did feel a little bit dated, so that's something for Elephone to maybe improve on, and if they improved on those two things, they would have a complete winner on their hands. Even if you had to pay an extra $20 from the consumer standpoint, I would gladly pay that to see those two things improved on this phone. Though with that being said, if you are a power user and you just simply want hardware out of your smartphone for the money, then the Elephone is definitely going to impress. And I mean, it even comes included with the clear cover pouch as well for the rear, and also the screen protectors, which was a very nice touch. So anyway guys, that's about it for me on the Elephone S2 Plus. I will be giving this phone a 4.5 stars out of 5 because it simply is fantastic value for money. Though I will be knocking off half a star because of that DAC amp solution being a little bit lackluster, and also as well as the fact that the UI just didn't really do it for me. Though keep in mind though that the included cameras as well were very good in practice. So there are a lot of good points about this phone, and I did ultimately like it, even though it doesn't work properly in Japan for me. And something that I will point out finally is that this phone, make sure that it's compatible with where you live. So for me in Japan, this phone is practically useless for being a mobile phone. But that being said, I will be shipping it off to my mum in Australia, and she'll be gladly enjoying a new smartphone in Australia because she hasn't used a smartphone yet. But anyway guys, that's about it for my review of the Elephone S2 Plus. If you liked it, then please give it a big thumbs up. And if you have any feedback or comments, then please leave a comment in the comment section below, as I'm sure there's something that I missed to do with this phone, since it is my first smartphone review. Anyway guys, if you haven't already, subscribe to Tech Yes City, and I'll catch you guys with another tech review very soon. Peace out for now. Bye.